Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Take Back My Brain. I am so excited about this conversation today. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of womanhood with Dr. Lera. She is amazing, and she is the founder of Whole Womanhood, and she has an online practice, and her story is going to be amazing. So I cannot wait to hear this. So, Dr. Lera, thank you for coming on today.
It's wonderful to be here. I'm actually not a doctor. I'm a nurse practitioner. But it's really interesting because a lot of my clients are doctors. So it's
Funny how that works.
wonderful to be here. It's wonderful, wonderful to speak to you. So I can't wait to dive in.
Awesome. So one thing I would love to know is you were a conventional nurse practitioner. So sorry, I misspoke there about being a doctor.
No, not at all.
But I consider you just like that. Anyway, but you were a conventional nurse practitioner. You probably looked at functional medicine a little bit weird, and something happened. You like saw the light. And so now you came over to the dark side or the light side, however you want to say that. So I would love to know what happened.
Yeah, I'm a board certified OB/GYN nurse practitioner. I was in it for a number of years. I started out thinking, much like all of us, heart in the right place, you want to change the world.
Yeah.
I actually got into it because I got really sick really early on. So I was misprescribed medicine when I was small. I was hit by a drunk driver, had to relearn how to walk. There were all these things where you see it and you're like, well, these people are, they're kind of like the anchors, right? And so I figured that there was a lot of me needing to do some work at an early age, and that makes you both curious and peaceful, yet a little bit angry, because it's always like this, why me? Especially if you're a teenager, or
Yeah.
right, it's like, why can't I just run around and be healthy like everyone else? And so I decided I really wanted to go into science. So initially I studied neuroscience, physiology, and behavior. It was really like mind-body connection, what's going on, figured I wanted to go to medical school. At the very last second, realized that I'm not sure that I really quite align with the allopathic model. It seems like there's a lot of band-aids. It seems like there's a lot of algorithms. I had wonderful, wonderful mentors who almost did like interventions. And they were like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I have things to prove. At the last minute, I decided to actually go the route of becoming an NP. I felt like it was a little more holistic. And I went into it. I went to school in Boston. I went to some of the most incredible rotations, residencies, internships. And the problem is that you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right? Like a lot of us. I wanted to go into community medicine, like when I did residencies in female prisons. You wanted to like get into it, like, look, we deserve to feel good. And then a couple years out of it, I guess my question became, why don't I feel good? Right? You're almost, I joke that you're like in the VIP section now, like you can run the labs, you can prescribe the meds. So why are we all going to each other? And why are we all just getting sicker? And I think for me, I was always interested in holistics. I did a lot of dance therapy for women. So by my background, I'm a dancer. And so there was this practice of like the physiology of dance. What does it do to our bodies? What does it do to our esteem, confidence, and our pelvises? How do we bridge that? And so people kind of knew me already as like, she might talk to you about gluten, which can't possibly have anything to do with anything. Right. And so I was in community health for a couple of years. And before I realized that I'm now one of the sickest women I know. So I'm very open about my story because I think that we as women are praised to be so strong. Yes. Right. I'm constantly saying this in my practice where I'm like, you are praised for being a martyr. And heaven forbid you model behavior. Modeling behavior means that suddenly you can actually be looked at as, how dare she does this? Right. No, you should just be sacrificing. And that's kind of how all of us grew up, right? Whether it was intentional or not, it's that the mark of a good woman is sacrifice. Right. And so I realized I was so excited because my patients are getting better and I loved what I did. And I didn't mind it when my medical assistants would actually walk behind me and check my blood pressure before every patient. because they were actually worried that I would drop mid visit. I was so, because you would see 20 people a day. I was in some higher risk places, right? Which means that women come in for a pap smear, but instead they're handing you a miscarriage in the tissue.
Oh,
Or
wow.
you speak English and there's organs missing, and you're literally trying to figure out how did this happen. They're literally here for a breast exam. And so you're constantly in this deep fight or flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
So you start developing gastric issues, right? Some digestive woes. Maybe you break out in a rash because you're so stressed. So you go see your colleague now who's in primary. So they prescribe you meds. And then they come see you for their birth control because no one taught us that you can only get pregnant, you can have a trillion sexes, and if they're at the wrong time, you won't get pregnant. Right. And so we all started talking about it, but I realized that at one point, I'm like, this makes no sense. We were sick to begin with. We're getting sicker, and I don't think we're making people healthier.
Right.
We're providing band-aids. We're doing it deeply, deeply, a lot of us, I should say, disclaimer, maybe I speak only for myself. Heart's in the right place, right? We want to change the world, we want to change the paradigm. I would train people in bedside manner, and I was literally a trainer for this in California.
Really?
And absolutely, like they would score us of like, do patients like you? And people loved me only because half the time I would be like, I don't know what's happening to you, but I really want to help. And they're like, you figure. I'm like, no, I need to refer you. And they're like, no, you figure. I'm like, no, I literally don't know what's going on. But people develop this trust and this bond when they just
Because you were honest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there comes this point where I realized, like, my blood pressure is through the roof, my hormones are trash, I have precancerous cells in my stomach, I don't know what's going on. I'm about to be 27.
You were so young.
Exactly. And I'm like, and meanwhile, you will kind of look like the picture of health because makeup exists, and adrenaline exists, and lighting exists. And I wound up moving to Stanford. So I thought that that would answer a lot of my questions. I thought that maybe it was that the field was so intense and that people were too sick. And I thought that maybe if I changed to a completely different demographic, I would feel safer. My body would feel safer. She would feel like it's okay to rest. And it got even worse. And so by that point, you're looking around, you're like, this makes no sense. We are all so sick.
Yeah.
And when they're coming to us, trusting that we'll make them better. And all we want to do, and all I want to do is accomplish that. And yet all we're doing is essentially bypassing.
Right.
Like there's so much bypassing happening. And you go in and you're just doing algorithmic care and you're trying. And so I actually wound up leaving while I was pregnant. I left. I thought I committed career suicide. No one knows that it's a Lifetime movie special until a couple years down the line.
Right? You're like, whoa.
At the time, I was just like, this is comically stupid, and I have no other choice. I have to save myself. And within a year, I realized by that point I was pregnant with my daughter. And I realized I have to care for this girl. Like we have to do something that shows her that her mom is not sick beyond measure. We never stood a chance, basically. Right? We never stood a damn chance. And I left. I started my own practice, is what I thought was a hobby. And just a hobby, just like a little hippie, holistic stuff. By that point, I got connected with a wonderful clinic. I took on their women's health department, and they were in functional medicine.
Wow.
And I've already been doing holistic medicine and functional medicine and dabbling in it, and everything took off. And at one point, I wound up parting ways with them, and they were amazing because my wait list for my own practice was about a year and a half long.
Oh my goodness.
And I realized I started, because I had been doing at this point functional medicine, holistic medicine, trying to figure out, what do you call it? Is it integrative? I put myself back together during that time, and it took years, right? It took years to actually understand that, yeah, the answer is holistic medicine. No, it's not. because then you go into the nervous system and women feel so, our bodies are so dysregulated.
Yep.
That now we go into like the light side, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
And instead of drugs, instead of pharma, we're using
Supplements.
Exactly. And so like, well, this wasn't enough. And there was this undercurrent of this last decade of me putting myself back together while going into functional medicine and saying, this is amazing. It's not enough. I finally started using my neuroscience background. It took me out of medicine for me to actually use biochemistry and neuro again.
Right.
And I realized that the missing link for almost all women is to actually, yes, it's to start with nervous system repair, to understand what that is.
Right.
Have you heard of polyvagal theory? Do you understand that you're probably not in fight or flight anymore? You've probably been frozen for a very long time.
You're probably just exhausted and flatlined.
Exactly. Like the burnout is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I realized for a lot of women, what happened is that we fuse those, which is amazing. And it gives us a huge, huge leg up. And then we still miss the giant elephant in the room, which for most women is embodiment. It's what are you doing this for? Right now we gold star us with being like, look, I'm so healthy. I'm like, but that in my practice, I work with incredible women. And I'm like, you are obsessive, you are compulsive, you are restricted. You have restricted your diet, you've eliminated everything, you're on 50 million supplements, you're scared to go outside, but don't worry, I guess you're healthy.
Right.
Right. And so that's kind of where my practice was born, is it's fusing all three.
Which I love. I love that.
It's so much fun.
It's so much fun. Yeah. I would love to dive into the neuro part of it, because, you know, I mean, we were talking before and I'm like, I always tell people we have to fix the neck up before we can do anything with the neck down. So it's always brain first. And so what are you seeing in your practice that led you to say, okay, that's true for me too. This is really what I want to focus on, because we have to get the brain shifted, the nervous system. I always say the brain, but really it's the nervous system, right? And so it's our whole nervous system that has to kind of get a reboot or recheck, a restart, or a total makeover before, you work on your thyroid and your adrenals and your gut. Because if this doesn't work up here, because we're very top down, we can't get everything else to work right. So how did you come into that, and kind of like, what's your approach and thoughts on that?
I love what you do. I couldn't say it better myself, just in terms of this succinct. It's not that, you're right, it's not that we have to start with the brain, it's that we start with the nervous system.
Yeah.
Where if a woman doesn't feel safe in her body, and safe is relative, right? You have women who effectively, what I find in practice is, you cannot get better. You will not. Congratulations, you did 50 more parasite cleanses. Like, majestic. You have an entire cupboard full of like herbs and other crap. There's a time and a place. They're amazing.
Yes.
But the nervous system is the actual foundation to build out resilience. And I think it startles women when they come into my practice. I joke all the time, I'm like, I'm the pot at the end of the rainbow. Like, you've probably seen a lot of other practitioners.
I love it. Yes.
I have not advertised in years. I mentioned it's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
And the practice was so booked out that I'm like, this is a wonderful problem to have, and yet it's still a huge problem, because there's an influx of women who are wanting this, and who have seen other practitioners who likely also have their heart and brain and everything in the right place, but they are not building out resilience as the first foundation.
Yeah.
Building out hope.
Yeah.
And I think it's a huge, huge problem, because what that means is it's taking this entire dynamic, this entire conversation you've had with yourself, and it's saying, don't worry, I'll save you. Do my cleanse, do these supplements, do this protocol. I private labeled these things, they're going to be amazing for you. You're still looking outside of yourself and saying, don't worry, Lera knows what to do with me. And it's, for lack of better words, it's bullshit, right? It's terrible, because we're teaching women again that you are not the anchor in your own environment. You don't trust your intuition. You probably haven't learned to build it out. Your self-worth is that you don't even think you deserve this. Right? It's not even to feel healthy. I'm like, I don't care that you're healthy. I tell this to women all the time. I care that you're free. Amen. And if you want to feel free, it's resilience, because shitty things will still happen to you.
Right. And how we respond to that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's this drive to be like, well, when I'm healed, and I'm like, when you're healed, you're dead. Stop it.
Right? Stop
There's
it,
no
because this is a
heal.
journey. This is a thing. Like, you have to take care of yourself every single minute of every single day. It doesn't stop. People are like, when can I go back to eating the way I was? Never. When can I go back to doing what I was doing? Never, because that wasn't serving you, right? That wasn't serving you. It's kind of like getting out of a relationship that's abusive, right? When do I get to go back to that relationship? Never, because it wasn't healthy for you. It wasn't healthy in any way, shape, or form. And it's the same when women they walk into my office. My goal is like, I would lay hands on people and everybody would be healed. Like, just be healed from this, and then let's work on, like, your mindset and how you view yourself and your identity, and let's just eat healthy for the rest of your life. Because it really boils down to what you're saying. Women in particular, just don't know who they are. We've lost ourselves in this world of chaos, trying to be something that we weren't designed to be, to do things that we weren't designed to do, and to take care of things that isn't our responsibility to take care of. There's definite things that we're designed to do, and most of us are not doing those foundational things. We're off over here, and the foundation is it's crumbling underneath us, and that's why our lives look so crazy and why people are so sick.
Yeah, and we're getting paid for it. Precisely.
Yeah, you're getting paid to be sick.
We're getting paid, we're getting praised, we're getting across the board, right? How often do you hear a woman being told, oh my God, how do you do it all? You're so amazing. And all she wants to say is, please help me.
Yeah.
And we're essentially cutting her off, being like, oh my God, and you have children, and you do this, and you do that. And I think going back to what you said too, that nervous system is that first teaching to women of how to be a model rather than a martyr. Right?
Amen.
You are no longer self-sacrificing to this point where the goal is to disappear. If you're a good woman, you will disappear until there's nothing left of you because you have given all of it away. And look how amazing that makes you now that you don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we have identity issues, we have worth issues, there's self-esteem issues. And like you said, I work with diet, I work with a lot of it, but I also am telling them, please be hedonistic. Right? What's the point of this? What's the point? Like, where's the pleasure in this? Like you said, when they're like, when can I go back to it? The goal is to make the transformation so clear that going back no longer makes sense.
Right.
And
Right.
it
There's no
doesn't.
desire for that. There's no desire for that kind of pit of hell anymore.
Exactly. You don't identify with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so nervous system to me has been it's been the crux of everything.
Yeah.
Because I have women come in who have seen, no, they've seen other practitioners, but they've also paid so much money.
Mm-hmm.
It's unreal because they're searching, they're trying to, that needle in the haystack is happening live, but they're also desperate.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I know? Because I was one. Right? So easy to talk about it when you're just like, I will take it. You want me to stand on my head? You want me to drink green stuff, red stuff, dog poop? Don't care. Just give me whatever I need to. Please don't let me feel like this.
Yes.
I think there's this element of being taken advantage of. And so we keep telling women, yes, work harder and invest more money, which a lot of this is an investment, right? It's a tiny.
Oh yeah, totally is an investment.
But I think for a lot of women, we just want to bring it back to basics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I find is that the foundations are so missed that we will still like rocket ship off into these worlds of these crazy cleanses and detoxes. And I'm like, did anyone drain you? And they're like, what does that mean?
What does that mean? I know people are like, oh, I've done lots of detoxes, Laurie. I'm like, no, you haven't. Your drainage is
exactly. And there's these foundations that are missed where I'm just like, if your nervous system is, if it doesn't feel like you are building out resilience, this can be a really expensive, honestly, pretty crap process.
Yep.
And it happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so
what would you say those pillars are, those foundational pieces for women?
I think so. I think it's twofold for me. I think that one of the pillars is actually the validation of, to me, understanding the actual data. I joke all the time, data is very sexy, as long as you don't use it as the entire umbrella of here's what's wrong with me, I can never get better, my genes are this way. I'm like, congratulations, small claps for your genes, here's your environment, what are your triggers, how do we put this all together?
Right.
So I think for a lot of it, it is this, it's getting to these root causes, right? It's looking through your lifestyle, through your diet, through the actual data. What do the labs show? Then you're fusing it with nervous system. Then you're fusing it with sensuality and embodiment. And then on top of that, you're actually physically superimposing vitality, right? This pillar to me is that I will never actually talk to women about becoming happy. Because a lot of them come to me like, I just want to be healthy and happy. I'm like, neither of those is actually a priority of mine. I think that you're kind of missing the point. And so these pillars usually tend to be resilience, vitality, foundations, self-worth.
Yeah.
I cannot stress enough that you are worthy. I'm saying this to women all the time, you're worthy of feeding your needs. And then one of the pillars to me is actually understanding what your needs are.
Right.
Which
Most
actually
women don't. Yeah.
that some of them will actually be like, oh, I was born for this question. Here they are. And I'm like, hey, you accidentally told me your wants, not your needs. And there's just this moment where they're like, what? They're different? I'm like, where do you know the practice of identifying the root of the root of the root of the root of your wants? So that when you meet a need, your body says, oh, thank you. Right? So you're actually depositing into your bank account without paying off a debt. That's, I think, what a lot of you're probably seeing in practice, and I'm seeing in practice, is someone's like, look at all these supplements, look at this, and this next thing. And I'm like, that's wonderful, but you've been like 100 grand in debt. Now you contributed a bunch, but you never actually paid off that other debt.
Right.
It went in and funneled straight out. You didn't build reserves. And so I think self-worth and that relationship to feminine energy, to masculine energy, which is where, if you heard me say this 10 years ago, you'd be like, I'm sorry, how does that relate to neuroscience?
Right.
How does that relate to the gut?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's everything.
Everything.
It's missing piece.
Yeah.
Precisely, it's those pillars where you actually get to dive into your womanhood, not just optimizing your humanness so you can work harder, right? You actually get out of this definition that your productivity is a direct reflection of your worth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How do you get women to get, like, what do you say to them, or what I want to say, how do you like get that out of them? Does that make sense? Because I've worked with some women for quite a few years, and all of a sudden they have the aha moment, right? It's not, I think people forget that sometimes it's going to take a bit, or it can take a bit, because we're so stuck in who we think we should be, what we ought to be doing, all those types of things, that, like, how do you draw that out of women to say, I am designed to be free. I was created to be free and resilient and to live this vibrant life and not feel guilty about that. Because I feel like guilt and shame is like this, vibration that's always there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I could not agree more. And I think the thing that I find missing, and I love your question, because we've been conditioned for this, we've been praised for it, it's been reinforced. And so the two things that I think I do, I think my practice is fairly non-traditional because I go straight to the source. And I say I'm pretty feisty. And so we have to talk about this point blank. I tell women right away, like, I will happily guard the supplements that you need until you actually need them. Because what we have to do is we have to get you out of your head, and we have to do it fast. So in order to, like you said, tame your thoughts, train your brain, whatever you want to do, whatever nervous system repair, whatever you want to do, what I find for most women doesn't work is that they're still so cerebral about their journey. They've gone to therapists, they've read about it. Ask them which are their 10 favorite self-help books, which ones, holistic ones, which YouTube video, which podcast, and these things are actually incredible.
Yeah.
But what we've taught women is that your brain is more important than your body, and that your brain can actually heal this. Right? which there's absolutely an element, of course it can, yet what we're doing is we're not actually reviving the body. Usually what I find is missing is that women are completely unaware of the deep, deep, deep importance of cyclical living and actually aligning to your natural body rhythms.
Right. We've totally.
Yes, we lost it. We're praised to be like, you're on a 24-hour cycle. I'm like, not quite at all, unless you're talking about your circadian rhythm.
Right.
We have these different body rhythms, this ultradian rhythm, the circadian rhythm. I'm like, stop being praised for just one of your rhythms. And so if we teach a woman very early on, what does it actually mean to harness and understand a natural body rhythm? You almost open this door a crack where you're saying, I'm tired. I'm like, thank God you're tired. It's day 25.
Right.
And I don't know what that means. And I'm like, you're luteal. I'm like, this is wonderful. They're like, I still don't know what that means.
Still don't know what that means. Yes.
Exactly. And so it's to dive in. I speak so much about cyclical living and taking that deep dive into it of what does it mean to do less while having the validation of the body.
Right.
And then the other thing, that number 2, is embodiment practices. Actually letting your body talk. What does she want to say? What needs to be released? What kind of movement therapies? And I find it so deeply lacking. So I'll teach movement workshops. I'll teach these things where I'm like, we're not going to dive into like a 20-minute choreographed routine, my friend. We're about to get some things out, right? And so there's these simple practices that you can do that aren't actually even nervous system. They're nervous system related, but they're not even targeting the nervous system. It's almost like this buffer. And it's this, to me, that's the gateway. The gateway is these to actually teach a woman proper embodiment practices so that she's not thinking, oh, I can't do this, I have low self-worth. I'm like, well, correct, you've probably had it for 40 years. We're not going to change from Tuesday to Thursday, but we are going to give you the actual resources to get out of your head. And that's where there's startling results, and they're fast.
Yes.
Women work with me. It's usually I do one-on-ones, but I'm building out groups, I'm building out a course because this is so needed. It's ethically the right thing to do. Just teach them. I'm like, just learn this. I don't care who it's from, just know it. And yet at the same time, even in my one-on-ones, women work with me a minimum of 6 months.
Yeah.
And we aren't even going to talk about your initial issue as a targeted thing for the first probably like 6 to 8 weeks.
I love it.
Doing some funky embodiment practices. We're going to see what comes out. We're going to teach you emotional fluidity. Can you actually label your emotions? Or have you been so proud that you're numb for so long that you're like every woman who comes into my practice who actually says, you know what? I'm actually okay. Like, no, I'm actually okay. Like, you haven't blinked in 5 minutes. Your shoulders are up. Okay. I can see your desk shaking from your nervous, like, knee.
Your knee never stops.
Exactly. But it's that and I tell them I'm going to do this. I do a lot of neurolinguistical reprogramming.
Okay.
Where we're going in and I'm like, we are going to teach you to think differently, like you said, in a way where you can't go back. It doesn't make sense anymore. Not that it's like off limits, don't you dare. It's that you physically can't see that as your reality anymore.
Right.
And it's incredible when that happens, just because you're not saying that the parasite is the root cause. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know, I joke all the time, like, your parasite could probably be friends with my parasite. They could go on a play date. Like we all have them.
We all have them. Yes.
You don't need to demonize and fearmonger anymore. We have to give women tools to crowd out the bad with the good. Instead of say, here's another thing wrong with you and another thing to fix and another way that you're broken. Right. And so usually that comes down to embodiment and cyclical living. And those are the two that I see missed most often as that introduction into resilience.
I love it. That's embodiment and cyclical living. That's great. It really is. When you're talking cyclical living, And you said, we have so many different cycles, right? And so how do we put them all together? Because I think for a lot of women, they're like, oh, I don't remember when I ovulated, right? They don't even know when their cycle happens, or they don't even know how to eat around that. So what's a couple different things you could say with the cyclical living, and a couple different things with like the embodiment? Like, what can people take away from that, from this podcast?
Oh, absolutely. Cyclical living, number one, is for most women, not all. I think we've all grown up. If you had any sex ed 101, which most women did not at
Right.
all.
No.
The average length of your cycle is usually somewhere between 26, 32 days ish. A lot of women have irregular cycles at this point. So I tell them the thing that you can do is actually look up at the moon.
Right.
Right? She's kind of silly, right? Who would have thought that a lot of women are actually cycling and they'll ovulate during a new moon or they'll ovulate during a full moon. The thing to take away initially is just to track how you feel from day one being the start of your bleed. Day one of your cycle, right, is the start of your bleed, when you actually have to use something to help you with your bleed, right? Whatever it might be. And then to move through it. And I actually have women, I try to take the pressure off in the beginning. I do have them either use a tracking app, like a very basic, the one on their phone, or even a note app in their calendar.
Yep.
And use the two. Just monitor how you're feeling. Physically, in terms of three things, like in the very, very beginning. Loosely track how your mood, your focus, and your physical energy is with a 1 to 10 scaling cycle at the end of every day as you're brushing your teeth. So I will have them literally put a post-it note that just says, like, right on their mirror where they're brushing their teeth, because they're like, oh, I forget. I'm like, please don't forget to brush your teeth. You should do it. I highly encourage it.
Just put a note there. That's why we still use Post-it notes. You can use this.
Exactly. And so I'm usually telling them, number one, just know you're cyclical. You have so much to gain with the fact that maybe you're not just sick and tired. Maybe you're exactly in that part of your cycle where that benefits you.
Right.
Number two, set an intention, right? Is there something that you want to focus on when you're cyclical? Maybe it's, wow, I really want to rest more. Wow, I feel like I'm over exercising. I have a lot of women start major projects or end projects or plan things in their lives. When they are in their cycle, and we do it 20% of the time, because again, the point is not to make them feel like there's another thing that they have to master. Right? You're loosely aware of it. You set an intention, avoiding stress a bit more, right? Saying no a bit more, or saying yes a bit more. You set that intention, and you just physically track, very loosely, post-it note style, 3 areas for 3 months. Mood, focus, physical energy, 1 to 10. What will start happening is they will actually see, oh, I bled, I don't know when I bled, let me go ahead and check, right? Maybe day 1 was 2 weeks ago. That's so weird. This is the 2nd month in a row where my focus is a 10 out of 10. It says day 14. I don't even know what that means. But that's so weird. Now month 3 is happening. My focus is 10 out of 10 around day 13, 14 again. Right? And they just start seeing that, wow, there's really these times where my mood it really drops maybe 3 weeks after my bleed. There's a lot of free resources. I literally offer a guide, like a free resource guide to women.
We'll post that in the notes. Yes.
That's a good, they just have access to the fact that the way that you start this is the same way that a woman like me who is so sick got here. Where you just put this little piece on and you don't become a cyclical living master. And you're not saying, no, I can't do this or do that because because I'm luteal, because I'm in this part of my cycle where I can't. It's that you get awareness. You see, is there one thing where you would say, wow, this would be really wonderful. I have this intention. I really want to set better boundaries. Why do I keep saying yes to things that I don't care about? They don't serve me. They deplete me. but turns out someone needs a fundraiser for this, and of course I raised my hand because it automatically went up.
Yeah,
right?
you're like, oh my gosh, I just did it again. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we actually break those three down, and you're just saying mood, focus, physical energy, 1 to 10, you'll miss a couple of days, and yet you'll still see these patterns emerge. And I've had women either track it in their phone or literally write it on that post-it.
Yeah, yeah.
It becomes a very crowded post-it, but they get very excited, they get very validated.
That's so great.
And it's pattern recognition. That's all I actually care about. And I think that you, I'm sure, work tremendously with this in the world of neuro, in the world of nervous system.
Yes.
Pattern recognition is actually, to me, the holy grail.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
You're looking at, then you're not chasing something outside of yourself. You're like, wow, this is really how my body works.
Yeah, I was just talking with a young lady earlier. She had an appointment, and there's still, we've been working on things for over a year now with her, but she still gets these kind of like head things, and like kind of a little bit of anxiety kind of creeps in, and it's still just reminding her, where are you in your cycle? Oh, okay, I just ovulated. So here's the pattern, go back to our notes. Here's the pattern. Every time you're ovulating, you kind of get this little anxiety that kind of creeps in a little bit, like on day 16 or 17, because you just ovulated. And so maybe you need to eat more. This is the pattern that we're recognizing. Maybe you need more protein this day, or maybe you need carbs, or maybe you shouldn't fast at all. A lot of people like to intermittent fast. Maybe this is not a time to do that. You can pick up on those things, so you're not chasing like, oh my gosh, now I need to go see a neurologist because my head isn't cleared up. Well, maybe it's because maybe you need to eat today. It could be just that simple.
It's wild. That, I think for a lot of women, they're looking for complexity because it's been so hard. That they're expecting for it to be like, so what's my supplement structure? When do I come in for my IV? And I'm like, take your feet, go outside and get sunlight.
Yes.
Eat your protein, and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is very helpful is to actually be able to put words to it. Like you said, when you feel that anxiety creep in, or you feel like something's off, often it's your body communicating that it's actually trying to get you back into alignment, not that she's against you.
It's a signal.
So, precisely. I give women just the tools of very limited words. I'm happy for anyone who's listening to understand what to call it. Your bleed is winter.
Oh, that's so good.
After your bleed, it's spring. Around ovulation, when you release that egg, it's not a long time at all.
Summer is short, especially in Iowa.
Exactly. It's summer. And then you transition to fall. And I ask women all the time where I'm like, well, I'm sorry, when you think of winter during your bleed, is this the time where you're thinking bikini? Or are you thinking that you're hunkered down, you're eating warm foods, you're in a sweater, you are hibernating? Act like it. And so winter is the process of being off.
I love it.
Right? Spring is turning on, summer is being on, and fall is turning off. Just those words. I have women who are like, I'm in winter. I said no. Or you want to have a hard conversation? You want to play? You want people? You want projects? That's summer.
Yeah.
Ovulation. You're creating. You're connecting.
Like, we could change the world when we're ovulating. Put 10 of us in a room, and world hunger, world peace is gonna.
Exactly. Yes. And then exactly 4 days later, give us all sweaters, give us all stew.
Yeah, because then we're gonna have tea and we're just gonna watch a Hallmark movie.
Precisely.
Yes.
Imagine if this was normalized.
Yeah.
Imagine if a woman didn't have to go on day 26. Is it PMS? Yes, of course, there's hormonal implications, there's gut implications. Or is it the fact that what you expect of yourself before everyone else is the famous tampon commercial? She's riding a horse and she could play tennis. I'm like, don't, stop it.
Stop it. Take a nap.
Exactly. You will life still lives.
Yeah.
Right? Things will still happen. But if you have this awareness, it's so fun to see women be like, uh-oh, I created plans when I was in spring. And now, but I planned those plans for 2 weeks later. And now I don't want to get coffee with them. Why? And I'm like, because you planned it in spring and you're meeting them in winter. Or you're meeting them in fall when you're rounding out your cycle, when you're about to leave, when you're turning off.
Yeah.
So I think even us bringing attention to it, and saying, you don't have to, this isn't a lifestyle. It's this awareness where you superimpose it 20-30% of the time, and it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
And mix that with nervous system, and a lot of women feel, a lot of symptoms start going away. Women feel better before you even touch them with labs, before you touch them even with diet things, because what happens, their stomach acid goes up. Your stomach acid tends to be low under high stress. Right?
Or
And
your
so,
stress, you increase your stomach acid.
yes, that like you're literally in this situation where physiologically you have these responses. That are altered. So I think it's wonderful to just let women know that it's actually internal first and foremost. Without another bulk shipment that you have to buy of all of the many different resources outside of yourself.
I know. It's a challenge. And I fall into that trap too. I'm like, okay, something's off. I'm just going to get this supplement or get this or that. And it's valid, right? Those are definitely valid things to do, because we're body, mind, and spirit.
Place.
Yes.
Exactly.
You need to
There's
address all three of them.
for all of it. Precisely. And still with conventional medicine, I have a lot of colleagues where I'm telling them there is a time and a place, like, please don't come to me. Like I worked in reconstruction. Go there. That is not like, not at all. And I still work with supplements, I still work with herbs, but the whole point is that they're supplemental. They're not trying to save you. You actually get the tools to actually nourish yourself. And you go in and you and I think we're both talking before this, that we're both mamas. Right? And so you fall into this deep trap of like, anything for my child, as long as they're okay, I'll be okay. And to bring back that modeling behavior. Look what happens when mama feels playful and energized. And I have women all the time who have kids, where I work with a lot with fertility, or women who are trying to get pregnant and have for many years. And like the version of you that these future kiddos would see is a woman who's so depleted and so trashed that that's not even the archetype, that's not even the symbol that you have in your head when you close your eyes and you think about it, right? And so I think that's what we're after, is modeling this behavior. That has to be the word that I use most often than not, unapologetic.
There you go.
Right? You can unapologetically take herbs and supplements. You can absolutely, I do infrareds. There's a lot of things that you can do, both with resources, with tools. It's just unapologetically using all of them, and most importantly, thinking that you're worthy enough.
Absolutely.
To actually go into it.
I agree. So where can my listeners find you?
So they can find me first and foremost at wholewomanhood.com. And it's
there are great resources on there.
So WHOLE womanhood.com. I am just now building out an Instagram. I think that I'm one of the first. I've been so invisible for so long on purpose. Kind of, people always joke like witch in the woods. Where it's word of mouth, and the problem is education just doesn't get as far. So now a lot of really wonderful things are being built out. I have a group that's starting, and I have a course being built out right now that's all of the most missed foundations.
I love it.
Yes, that I see in my practice. It's the first 3 months where before you dive into anything, I don't even think people need someone one-on-one for these. It's like, please just make sure you have the resources and the information. And the support can come in a number of different ways. So I do have a starter kit as well. And I think that we can link that. I think we were talking about,
definitely we'll link that. Yes. Awesome.
And the cyclical living template. So Instagram is also Whole Womanhood. And it'll be built out with a lot of resources coming to you live right now in kind of all of these different pockets.
I love it. That's so great. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I would love to have an extended conversation with you at some point in time again. So I think that would be fantastic. So.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. I think that I love the fact that we're rising in numbers. Right. We're giving women permission to say, please crave more. Like, is between what you're doing, between what I'm doing, people are actually fighting for this.
We are.
So thank you. I'd love to be back, and it's been wonderful to speak to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share with everyone that you know, because we want to change, one life at a time, but the more you share it, the more lives we get to change, right? So that's why we're doing what we're doing, is to reach the masses so that everybody can live with vitality and freedom and be all that they were created to be. So thank you for listening to the podcast, and I will see you in the next episode.